And I suppose that leads to the $1.3 billion civics question that's in the chat, that if the legislature knows that DOC is out of control or broken, then how is it that year after year we keep on seeing budget increases without those questions as to where that money is going?
So if I could lead with this really quickly. So this is the first year that we are going to be able to actually ask them direct questions about funding and where the money is going, and also being able to use the audit. We have to also understand this too, that when we fund DOC, we are also paying salaries. We're paying for health care for some of these employees that work there. If we cut that funding, then we're going to affect some of those people that work there. Now, it doesn't give them a green light to just go do what they're doing like now, but we just can't cut funding to the DOC because of that. Now, and again, if we cut funding, these folks are still in prison. And we have a situation with Locks. We had the escape in Lewis. If we're not paying these folks, and if we're not trying to fund them at appropriate levels, we're going to see more issues as we've seen in the past. And then that really becomes a public issue, a public safety issue. So we just have to fund them smart, not just give them a bunch of money and let them do what they want to do with it.
You know, what has happened is for the majority of the state's history, the operation of DOC has just been sort of put on autopilot. They come in and they'll make their presentations, and then they'll name a number, and then that number is basically, then the legislature writes a check. But what that has ended up doing is normalizing a system that is a mystery to the vast majority of people in Arizona. And quite frankly, it's a mystery to probably a lot of people who even work in that department. So what we need to do is, instead of normalizing this closed system that isn't accountable, that isn't transparent, we need to normalize transparency and accountability, because you can go to Mr. Blackman, what Mr. Blackman was touching on when he's talking about cutting staffing and cutting budgets in terms of who pay for staff and other people who work there or related to the industry or to the department. Part of being a legislator is making sure that you're writing a responsible budget. And quite frankly, there just isn't enough information right now to figure out what can be cut and what can't be cut. We can have a discussion about, if we lower the number of people who are incarcerated, that's going to realize a certain dollar savings. We can do that, but we don't know where the rest of it is going, or how it's being used for the most part. So the first part of drafting a new budget, developing a new, more transparent and accountable budget process, is actually getting the sunlight in there so we can see how the whole thing works. Because you've heard the term black box. A lot of how DOC operates is a black box. It just kind of churns out the product, but nobody really knows what's going on the inside. And that's the frustration for many people in the legislature. And quite frankly, it's a scary prospect if you go to a legislator and you say, hey, would you support this cut, or would you support this reallocation? And then when they say, well, tell me why or why we shouldn't do that, the answer really you don't really get a solid answer, because we don't really know the specifics. So I think that is part of the issue as well.
In this budget piece as well, beyond just staffing, which has come up several times, there's infrastructure issues extant in, I think, nearly all of the complexes, all of the state complexes in the state of Arizona. We had, potable water being contaminated down in Douglas. We've had water systems out at Perryville. We've had systems out in Florence and Iman complexes where people are going days, week at time without any potable water at all. There's the lock issue. There's just a number of the radios. When we had panels with staff members, one of the things that they brought up, the two staff members, Mindy Krasinski and Brian Radford, repeatedly was the radios that the officers use to communicate inside during the day, which are needed for security and for medical emergencies and all types of things. They have to have these communications. They don't work. There's a huge amounts of infrastructure issues. And I was looking at the Auditor General's reports that Mr. Blackman has referenced earlier, and in one of those reports for the periods of 2016 to 2019, which was the sample period. The Auditor General was looking at the reports and staffing levels in finance, and I may be misquoting this, but it was somewhere around 60% of the funding of the Department of Corrections is expended on personnel, on full-time employees and benefits and those type of things. And so the question that keeps coming up in my mind that we're going to have a reckoning when we talk about this budget is if we have really low staff levels, if we have a huge attrition problem in these lower staff levels, we have infrastructure problems, and 60% of the budget is being allocated towards the employees that are existing there now, which is significantly understaffed. If we, to get those staffing levels up and to get the infrastructure up to where it needs to be able to house human beings inside of our state facilities, we're going to need a significant increase in monies going to the Department of Corrections. And so what we're going to see, as we've seen over the last 4 years from 2017 to 2019 or 2021, was we saw a 19% increase in funding going to the Department of Corrections when we were seeing a 10% decline in the population of the Arizona Department of Corrections. So there is a number of issues. And going to Mr. Rodriguez's point, the issues that we have right now is that we as taxpayers, as lawmakers, as the citizens who are paying these bills, we don't know what's broken in there. The only time that we learn about what's broken is when it blows up, when Jimmy Jenkins does a report on it, or enough people come out, or a staff member comes out and puts their career and their life literally on the line to be a whistleblower about these issues, which has happened a number of times. And so there is huge systemic problems here, and they're not going to get better anytime soon. And this budget piece is a huge issue that needs to be looked at comprehensively, and we need the truth. We need to know what's going on in there. We need to know what to fix.
Again, I want to caveat what you said there, and you hit the nail right on the head. The AG's report is going to guide us. We're having the sunset review early next month, and before we actually get into session, and those are some of the hard questions I'm going to ask: is where is this money going to? 60% are going to salaries, but you're still using swamp coolers in the building. It looks like it's something that came off the Shawshank's Redemption. Right. So it's time for us to make sure that the money is being spent properly. Now, I don't. You know, I've been out there several times to these facilities. And I've had one-on-one conversations with some of the wardens, and they generally want to do the right thing, but they are trying to fix a broken system, and so there's enough blame to go around when we're talking about DOC. It's time to stop blaming folks, and let's just fix it. And an oversight committee will do that. An oversight committee will give us that transparency of what we need when we're talking about infrastructure needs, when we're talking about personnel needs, and then we can actually see where the best place that money so we can have a good system. Makes no sense that we're running an archaic system and we expect a different outcome when these folks get out of prison. And then we have folks that are standing on the rocks or the bully pulpit saying recidivism is high and these folks are just career criminals. It's what we're producing when we have these folks come out, and the environment is part of that. And I get some folks really, they'll say to me, "Well, you're soft on crime." I'm not soft on crime. I'm pretty tough on crime, but we've got to be smart on reform. And this Overwatch bill will make us smart on the reform because we can see what we need to reform, what's working, what doesn't work, and get rid of some of the bad apples in there if we need to.